All right. Hi everyone. So I have a video today that's a little bit different, and I hope you will forgive me. It might be a little bit long, and I have actually done a bit of a write-up on this because there's a lot of that I want to say about this, and I want to make sure that I don't ramble too much. So I'm going to kind of go off of this written version that I've done, and I will post this written version as well for you to go back and read. But just please bear with me if you have time and feel like it. So, what I'm going to talk today about, so my topic is kind of what I call beyond coding, business thinking, and alternative vision. And let me just give you the summary of what I'm trying to get at here. So, learning programming and how to code is not just about getting a job. I know that I talk a lot in my videos and books and all sorts of things about learning to code and, getting job ready skills and whatnot, but we're going beyond that today. So, here's what I'm hoping for. If there are companies and products out there that you don't like or that you don't agree with their practices, my hope is that you can use coding and other skills to provide alternatives, not just to get a job. And in order to do this, I encourage you to learn business thinking skills. All right, so let me get into the meat of this. All right, like I said, you've seen a lot of my videos and ebooks and whatnot about learning computer science, software development, and coding. And in a lot of cases, that's because there are people out there who are, my students or viewers who are trying to do something different with their career or to do better in school, pass a computer science course or something like that, right? Or you might be using coding skills for personal projects, like making little tools for yourself or making games that you may hope to share and sell. However, I do have a bigger goal with this and a bigger picture, which I've shared with some of my students that I've worked with personally. Um, and again, like I said, you might, in the course of your everyday life, I'm sure you've probably found that there are some products that you don't like for whatever reason, and those might be computer products or software or other kind of products. Or there might be companies whose practices you don't agree with or that you don't want to support. But sometimes it's hard to find an alternative that fully meets your needs to replace that product or company. And like I said, I'm sure we can all think of companies or products where we'd really love to ditch them, but sometimes they're just hard to get away from. And in this video, I'm not really going to name specific companies or names here, but just kind of fill in the blanks for um, companies or products that you personally might feel that way about. All right. So, in some cases, when you have companies or products like this, there are alternatives out there, but maybe you just don't know about them or aren't comfortable with the learning curve. For example, to save money, you could replace some of the processing software programs that you might use that require a paid license. You might look at open source alternatives like OpenOffice. And okay, this is the only time I'm really going to name names, okay? But a lot of people don't necessarily know about that option or feel comfortable installing a new program on their computer. All right, because some of us might not have really advanced computer literacy skills. So that's one case where you might have an alternative, but maybe there's a situation where there aren't any good alternatives, or some of the alternatives that are out there still need some improvement or really aren't, you know, checking off those boxes that the main competitor you're using are. So, what I hope is that in cases like that, my students and viewers and anyone else out there will be able to use the coding skills and other skills they use to fill in those gaps. So, it's critical in order to create alternatives to learn about coding and other skills, such as how computers and internet and other technology works. For instance, look at areas like how to create computer hardware, right? Or understanding electrical engineering so you can make circuits or devices. Or maybe something like learning about how to actually put a website online, or maybe how to even create your own website hosting. So you don't have to worry about someone else controlling your hosting and whether or not your site will be online at all. All right. So those are skills that go beyond just coding and programming for a job. All right. And the main key area that I think is good to learn for any field is business and business thinking skills, because creating a product that meets a need and then getting out to people requires strategic thinking. So even if you're not a business student, this is something that I encourage you to think about. To help you start thinking in this way, there's some resources that I'm going to link that I think might be useful for you to check out. And the first one is a site called the 20-Minute Business Plan. It helps you to build something called a business model canvas. All right, and I'm not going to go into all the details here, but this is something that I think I've shared with my students and I've used for myself. And I think it's really powerful and useful for business thinking. So I would encourage you to check that out. It's at a site called alexandercohen.com. And I will post the link in the comments or in the description. Okay. And then there's an author called Steve Blank, and he and Bob Dorf wrote a book called The Startup Owner's Manual. And, it covers a lot of the same content as this business model canvas. But I have this book, I've read it, and I think it's just a really good book to change your thinking. So if you go to steveblank.com, if you go to startup books, and books for startups, you'll see this book linked as well as a lot of other resources. Okay, so let's start getting that business thinking going. All right. I also want to have a couple of disclaimers here. Um, I do understand that it's not easy to start a new business or offer a new product in order to provide alternatives to some of these large organizations and businesses and products. I know it takes time, money, skills, and resources. But if you feel that this is something that you're called to do, the biggest, most important thing to do is to get started, even if you have to start small. And the thing is, you have to take a long term strategic point of view. Many of the biggest corporations out there that we use products from every day, or services from, some of them that you can probably think of even now, started out when I was young. All right. And I'm not super old, but now a lot of these companies are the major controllers of their market, right? Even since the time that I graduated from college. And a lot of times, there is luck involved too with these companies, being at the right place at the right time, having the right people and the right connections, having the right family members. All right. So I understand we don't all have that. I certainly don't. Um, but you can increase your chances of luck with preparation and learning, which you can start on now. And again, I'm not going to condone or condemn um, the use of any particular product or business. All right. I'll leave that up to your personal discretion about how your own convictions about particular items and products and companies, and how making changes would affect how you're able to navigate what you need to do in your everyday life. All right. I'm not telling you to boycott this or dump this or whatever the case may be. I could even argue that for some people, even using a platform like this on YouTube would be feeding into something that some of you don't agree with. So, I understand that. But you should choose your own line and your own limit according to how you feel called. Again, I'm not advocating a specific set of companies or tools or things that you need to take a stand against. That's probably going to be different for everybody, all right? Or that you want to see replaced with something better. All right. Also, please don't mistake this for a pull yourself up by your own bootstraps talk. All right. Like I said, it takes a lot of work and a lot of lucky breaks and being in the right place with the right people, even with a lot of these corporations and products that you see now. All right. But what I will say is that applied knowledge is power. And I don't want you to be intimidated by the odds that may be against you to the point where you don't feel like you can even attempt to create something that you're called to offer or to do. Okay. I understand that this is not going to solve all the problems that are out there. And I won't say something like if you work hard, study and all that, you can be rich and powerful because, I know that's not the case. I know that we all have responsibilities and things that happen in life. So you shouldn't feel ashamed or like this is a scolding if you don't have the time, money, or resources to work on something you feel called to do. You know, I'm really saying we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle to take on some of these things that we don't necessarily want to support. But, I want you to work with what you have. And if you do that, you can likely build things that provide a lot of good value for people who want something different and that might have more success than you give yourself credit for being able to achieve, even if it's something small, right? One of the good things, again, about software and other industries out there now is that compared to other times in history, it's relatively easier to create something out and get it out there to people. For example, look at the independent game development space, right? If with the right resources and training, anybody can pick up a computer and make a game, get on the internet and put it out there, right? But of course, the flip side is that it's harder to stand out. So that's where luck and business thinking can come into play, right? So that's why I'm suggesting that you start looking into some of these things now. All right. There's no blame or shaming here from me if you try to put out an alternative product or business and it doesn't work. Hey, I'm not in a position to be talking down on anybody because there's things that I've wanted to accomplish and that I've worked towards as well. But I'm not necessarily landing the impact that I hoped or thought that I would have, right? So, and in a lot of cases, I'm in this boat with you guys too, right? So, my goal is just to do what I can to help people to be aware of and get access to the tools that are out there and to help you think big and to help you to feel more confident about being able to set out to accomplish even a little bit of what you want to do, right? Even a little bit is better than nothing. I've been fortunate enough to have access to certain opportunities and information that have helped me, and I feel like part of my calling is to help connect people who don't have that same access with a chance to get some of these opportunities as well, right? And I know that going out there and doing something outside of a regular, work for somebody else structure is one of the hardest things to do out there, especially when you have responsibilities and other commitments, right? And you might be doing that alongside your regular financial and family commitments. So, again, no judging, just more encouragement and, trying to help you see things in a different perspective. Right. And again, there's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence, how that's making it useless to learn coding and other skills. And, there's people saying, why bother with school and learning? It's no use. Or, that some of these companies or products are too big to really make a dent on, right? And I understand that and I hear that. But I feel like that can disempower you and really kind of trick you into willingly giving up the tools that you can use to maybe improve a situation, right? Why lock all of the, if I have like a infestation in my house, right? That would be like somebody at like the pest control company locking up all of the raid and traps and poison behind a giant paywall, even the stuff you can go to CVS and buy, right? And then saying, oh, there's no use. You have to use our solution. Don't worry about it. You have to rely on us, right? Don't surrender your weapons um, willingly. All right. Don't be hoodwinked into doing that. If artificial intelligence is really going to take over, which I'm not going to go down whether that's true or not. And if we're surrounded by computer technology in almost every aspect of our lives, which for a lot of us, that's true, won't we serve ourselves better if we understood how those things work? Even going beyond just learning about technology, if you have an idea for a non technical solution to something that seems to be dominated by tech in a negative way, why not give yourself the best chance of creating that solution and sharing it with others? If you're not happy with how you feel some businesses and corporations might do business, isn't it better to know the rules of that game that they play, the business game and the whole game of life, so that you can do something different and also recognize when the game's being played against you. All right. So, and this is not just for business, right? This is not just for setting up a for-profit business or product. This can also be for nonprofit efforts, right? Or open source projects or community projects or whatever the case may be. All right. So that use this thinking for wherever you feel that it fits in and that would make the best possible difference. All right. So I know this took a detour, but to sum up, I want to encourage you to think big and strategically. I recommended looking into some business principles. And again, you can look at some of those resources that I linked. Feel free to share others if you want. This is not just about coding for the sake of a job, but for how you can use it to be impactful and provide alternatives. And, there are alternatives out there already for some of these things, but you can also use some of your business skills to maybe do a better job of getting those alternatives in front of people in a more widespread fashion. All right. And like I said, it's really not just coding and computer science, but apply these principles to any useful skills. And like I said, I hope that someone could take something away from this. And if you end up providing some of these alternative products and offerings, I hope that this helps you to do that. And I look forward to seeing what you all go forth and create. Thanks again for bearing with me. I know this was long, but I hope it was helpful. All right. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to wrap up here. Bye.